Yeah. Anyway, so yes, apologies all to anyone that's joining us. We're a little bit late, which is my bad, but only a minute or so. So, good morning, Jesse. I hope you're well. I see you're wrapped up there for the cold weather. Is it?
Yeah.
Is it pretty bad?
Well, yeah. Well, I had the benefit of working down in Charleston, South Carolina, for a week at our home office, and so now I have to readjust this Boston weather. I think it's like 14 right now. So yeah, I'm bundled up, and that's
right.
Yeah.
My brother used to live in Ashland, just outside Boston. It was beautiful there, but yeah, you would get pretty serious snow there.
Yeah, it's it's the snow we can deal with. It's this 10-degree weather and chasing the kids around, but that's not why everyone's tuning in, I'm sure, to listen.
No. So I did want to take some of these points that you'd made in one of the Telegram channels here as things that you wanted to cover. So you talked about, I'll just list them quickly. You talked about we're nearing the halfway point of the fiscal year. Where do we go from here? The KCC process and lack of consistent communications. KCC and embassy, who's in control? I made a mistake on my form. What do I do? I'm in 221G refusal AP. Is there a way out before September? There's some questions there. I wanted to also discuss the Limbo thing, which I think you probably will know what I'm referring to. And then you made some sort of statements about what the state will have to do in terms of numbers of interviews, and I think we should discuss that as well. So, okay, to just sort of jump into that list, sort of where do we go from here on the halfway point?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's relevant kind of to reset once we get it. Every month where we get a new bulletin. I know that created a ton of hope, and it created a lot of anxiety. It was great news if you're in the United States and you can file adjustment of status, because the numbers did ramp up. So that was just a tremendous benefit. It made a lot of people current. And I know a lot of people were hesitant to join lawsuits or to think that they had to be current to express the harm necessary to go before a judge. And we had a busy week in our cases in Husu and Preston. It wasn't just adding plaintiffs. I actually went through and wanted to strengthen our arguments. And I wanted to point out, and this is something I've been kind of harping on for a bit now, because what I see from the Department of State this year, and we're halfway through, is that they are going to do 500,000 worldwide immigrant visas. I believe that. I think they're going to do a tremendous amount of non-immigrant visas as well. And the argument this year, right? We've always been talking about this year is different. We don't have a entry ban from the president. We don't have a tiered structure that's publicly out there. But what we do have is this return to normalcy in a post-COVID world where something's seriously amiss if they're doing 1 to 3% of diversity visas in proportion to 100% of immigrant visas. And that's really what I think is most compelling. I also, the argument that I've also created is they're on record now. The government is on record now saying that they have to prioritize immediate relatives and other immigrant visa categories. We litigated for 3 years. They never said that. So that's new and awfully wrong. And so when we look here, that's kind of I'm throwing a punch. That's my punch to them and my argument to the court. And I feel good about where I'm going to take my clients with that. I also believe, though, that the government is not foolish. And we talked about this, about what they were going to do with the visa bulletin. And as we sit here and they are about 2,500, 2,600, maybe even 2,800 issued, they know that they have to get to 25,000.
Yeah.
And they know that they have really bad embassies who are not doing anything. And somehow, some way, they got to make the numbers work. And I expect that we are going to see a massive ramp in interviews. We may get 7,000 a month for a couple months.
And so just to clarify, are you talking about interviews or are you talking about people, sort of derivatives included?
I'm talking about issuances, but to get there, they're going to have to get the interviews, right? But I think they're going to.
So to get 7,000 a month, they would have to interview probably 8,000 people, and that means roughly 4,000 interviews.
Yeah.
That would be a big ramp, probably more than I've ever seen before, slightly. But in order to do that, for example, they would have to get some of these embassies into the game that are currently on the sidelines, like Cairo, some of the big volume embassies.
Yeah, and I know I'm probably a little bit too optimistic, but when I look at it, I always put on my government hat from my career. And if I were the attorney reading the complaints and some others in other lawsuits, I would say, listen, I can't go to court on 8,000 issuances. Okay. You gotta get me to 20, because if not, they're gonna win, and we're gonna be in this game where we have to. And so they always want to they have the ability to make themselves look better before the judge has to issue a decision, and they're gonna do that. I believe. I think they will react. Now, does that mean? And I kind of had this, I don't know if this was public chat or I was just with a client, but I think they're going to have to do something with Cairo. I think they're going to have to do something with some of the bad, you call them shit list embassies in Africa. I think our complaint against Sydney is, I'm actually surprised they haven't come to me yet, to be honest. I think they're going to have to do something with the entire region, the OC region. But again, and just so everybody knows, the Department of Justice represents the Department of State, and the Department of Justice is the ones who look at the legal arguments. Okay, I got to defend our client, the Department of State. What do I have to do? I got to call my client, right? Just like I would call my client who maybe wasn't behaving well, and I'd say, listen, you got to put yourself in a better position, because right now we're in tough shape.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to underline your point there of the 500,000 issuances versus the percentage that they should be doing for DV. Abu Dhabi was an interesting one. I was just looking at that this morning because somebody was asking a question. Now, here's a typical case where previous to the pandemic, right, you can see that in any given year, let's just have a look at this, they would do, let's have a look. They would always do some DV cases, and in fact, in some periods of time. So, for example, in let's have a look at the sort of the real busy time. So, in the July of 2019, for example, they did 45 DV1s plus 18 plus, so that's 60. So that's 100 DV cases out of a total of nearly 470 or so. So they were doing a reasonable clip, like 20%. This is pre-pandemic. It's not the busiest month. It's July. That was it's refreshed, obviously. So let me just switch that over. But I wanted to ask you about this particular one because you just mentioned that they've got to prioritize. They've mentioned they've got to prioritize which visas?
Immediate relatives.
Immediate relatives. Okay, so immediate relatives are the IR ones, right? So IR 1. 2, 3, 4. So those are the ones that they say they've got to prioritize. Look at what they're doing. They're doing all these E3 ones, employment ones. They did 400 employment ones in November.
Well, let me address that, because it's a very important point, and that adds to they're going to do at least 500. They're probably going to do 600. So they've also come out and publicly stated, we're going to do 100% of employment base. Right. And they're encouraging people, people can kind of shift preference categories. No. This is an absolute mission from the Department of State to hit all IVs, family-based and employment-based. And if they leave diversity visas in the dust, so be it. I mean, that's where they're at. However, even if we take that, I mean, it helps my case, right? But even if we accept that, I think when you look at the math, even in 2020, when we had an entry ban, they did around 8% diversity visas to the worldwide ratio, right? So for them to go to 2 or 3%, I would be like, if I were the judge, I don't care what judge, I'd be like, what's different, right? How do you answer that? How do you answer that?
Yeah.
So it's simply
2020 you sued them. So, that was, they wouldn't have achieved that without the lawsuits, right?
Oh, yeah.
The 8%, right? So, and they were clearly stopped in other areas. DV got a marked advantage over other classes because of the Gomez lawsuit and the related suits, right?
But they still did 240,000 that year.
Yeah, right. But that was all prior to March of 2020, right? Or more or less all.
More or less, but I mean, I think it just speaks to the number one. It does a couple things for me, because when I always have to, when you go before a court or you go before, it's almost like talking to your neighbor who knows nothing, right? They don't do immigration, they don't know anything, and you say to them, listen, we have a couple categories of visas. Historically, this is how they do them all. They do a massive amount, maybe even close to 500,000 or more. And there's this other pocket where they just have to do about 55,000, which really they could do. They spread them out around the world for some embassies, but it's not a huge lift for them to do about 44, right?
Right.
And right now they're doing 2,500, and we're halfway through the year. I mean, anyone there is going to say, well, why?
Yeah.
And that's what I want the judge. That's really what you really want to create for a judge. You really want them to say, well, why?
Yeah. It's just not defendable at all. It's shameful. Okay. All right, cool.
Yeah. And again, it speaks to a little bit of my strategy, and that strategy. My strategy really is not to fight with them. It's really to expose, and then have them, whether it's the White House or someone else, come to me and say, well, how do you suggest we fix it? And I can tell you, I would say this: you could almost send up you got a huge hole. You better shift some staffing around. You got to get Cairo on board. You better get Sydney on board, and you better have these embassies in Africa get increased staffing and a willingness to take on these cases, like now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I mean, I know you're very well aware of the data. We're watching the data, and I think people ask occasionally about the shit list because I think they think it's somewhat official. It's not official in any way, but it is something that just helps sort of watch the data in some of the more troubling embassies. So you mentioned Cairo. Addis is another one. Khartoum is closed, for a different reason. I think it's probably going to stay closed. Nairobi, Amman, Abu Dhabi, Montreal seem to be picking up. Johannesburg is a mess. It's not doing anything. Yeah. So there are definitely there are embassies in Africa, particularly if they can bring those online or get them working properly, then then we'd be in much better shape.
Well, and again, I know I'm taking too much time on the where do we go from here, but if we see COVID wane as we have, and I know the Queen just got it today, but if we see it wane overall, it really takes that huge leg out of their argument, which is we can't do this because of COVID. Because the way I would back on that is say, but look at the IVs and employment-based. Look at the employment-based and the family-based immigrant visa issuances.
Yeah.
You're killing it. It can't be COVID. It's not COVID. And it's not anymore. And this is why, again, 2022 is different. I'm not arguing last year's cases or 2020. Those are different. And for Johannesburg and Sydney and some of these other embassies, like Abu Dhabi specifically, when they shifted those, Baghdad and Kabul, and they say, well, we put some of those at Abu Dhabi. It's like you put them there, but you actually have to do them.
Yeah, you can't just let them rot.
Yeah. Like it's almost like they're shuffling chairs on the Titanic. Like it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, exactly. The ship's going down anyway. Okay, so back to your other points that you wanted to cover then. KCC process and lack of consistent communication. I do need to write a blog article this week, which is to identify exactly the meaning of those emails they sent out. And there is a slight suspicion raised by a smart guy called Fadi to me that was one of the emails that we're treating as documentarily qualified has a slight difference in it from the other one. One of them is the one that says, you will soon get instructions on, what other procedures you need to do. And that was the email they were using prior to the document procedure being used. Because it meant that the DS-260 has been processed, I've been taking that as documentarily qualified in today's norm, right? However, it seems to be whenever we ask the question about that particular email, people seem to respond, yeah, I changed my passport. That seems to be a common thing. Now, after the December the 9th, they removed, when they removed the document procedure, they shouldn't have been asking any questions about passports. But actually, there was at least one case I saw where they actually asked someone for proof of why the passport was different to the original entry. They shouldn't be doing that. So your point of lack of consistent communication, the transparency is crap. We don't know what they're doing. They won't be honest. And they use template emails and sometimes randomly just send out a template reply. But we need better communication or information.
And I think it makes it hard for me or for you. And sometimes not that I can't get attacked. I'm happy to admit mistakes when I make them. But if someone, if I say an answer like this is what should happen, then they point me to like a text. They text me a picture of something. I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, I'm not. Again, I can't speak. Unfortunately, I wish I could. I cannot speak to what KC is doing because I can't make sense out of the senseless. And that's what I really, my point has been, I can look at the regulations, I'm a lawyer, right? I look at the regulations, I look at the law, and then I look at what they do. And I really do. I struggle to give really good advice on what they do because I can't justify some of these communications. It's inconsistent. Right. It's inconsistent.
Yeah. Beyond the communications, it is absolutely 100% clear that there is some level of processing going on with DS-260s right now. And there should be background checks. They should be doing all that. No problem with that. However, in some of the court cases, there's statements and sworn statements by the staff saying, no, when you're DS-260 now, because, after December 9th, when your DS-260 is sent in, you're ready for interview, right? They don't mention a bloody thing about processing. So, they need to clarify that statement. And frankly, they should be, held up to account for the fact that they essentially have put this full statement out there. They've said it in the official announcement about December 9th, and they've said that same thing in later responses in sworn statements, declarations for lawsuits. And it's clearly not true. We've got the proof it's not true. Well, right, how can they be sending all these emails saying, yeah, you're still processing, it will take 6 weeks or whatever bullshit they come up with?
Well, and we, we're going to get an answer from the government prior to, about April 11th or so. And they're likely to say, hey, get out of here. Your arguments stink. And what they'll probably do is say, well, this was just a pilot program. And so we what that means is it's an experiment. And we're changing the potions all the time. And if we did one thing here and one thing there, that's okay. We can be arbitrary because it's just a pilot program. Now, that's what they're going to say, right? So I think that's where this will go because we've seen them make egregious mistakes, right? Sending interviews or, out for people who aren't even current. And there's been experiments at the embassies as well. But I think, they'll hide behind that pilot type of argument. And of course they'll blame all the prior lawsuits and all that stuff too. I don't know if it'll work, but I mean, I just want to forecast kind of where I think they'll go.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. KCC and the embassy, who's in control? What did you mean by that question? What was that?
Well, I think a lot of people will say, I'm current now. I got an email saying that I'm complete. There's really nothing for me to do. Who is really blocking my progress? And the way I look at it is I'm heavily leaning towards an embassy because an embassy will, KCC will, how many you taken this month, right? You've had that conversation. And so for me, I think you could be OC 12. And if you're in Sydney, it doesn't matter. So the embassy is really the one at that point that's in control, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of where I was arguing. A lot of people think, well, the KCC is holding me back from sending it to the embassy, and I actually think it's not that in certain cases. I think it's really the embassy who says, well, we're only going to do, like, if you're at Abu Dhabi and they ask how many DVs can you take this month, and they say 3. right? Isn't that, I mean, do you see it the same way, or?
Yeah, I agree with you. So it's the embassy don't control the whole thing, but they set the capacity that they can take, right? KCC have responsibility there then to schedule the interviews based on DQ date order and cases current and cases processed, etc. So I think part of your point is in some cases, yes, I 100% agree. The embassy is the blocker. If KCC hadn't removed the document procedure December 9th, and if they hadn't have moved the numbers up this month, then they could have been held sort of to blame, right? What they've done is by moving the numbers up massively and by removing the document procedure and hopefully doing the work of processing all the cases, they are really shifting the blame, if you like, to the embassies in a sense. And that's what we're seeing because, if the embassy wants to sit there and do 3 interviews in a month, which is unjustifiable when they're doing 400 E3s or something, then absolutely, that's down to the embassy. But previously, the KCC did no work between May 25th or so and September. They did very little work between September and December. And then December 9th, they threw their hands up and said, we've realized why it's not working. It's because of this bloody document procedure we don't know how to do. So we're not going to do that anymore, right, as a pilot program. So, it's they accept responsibility in a sense. They've changed their procedures, but they're not doing it fast enough. And the embassies are ultimately then holding the thing back.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, if I were the embassy, right, and I'm getting the fingers pointed at me, I'm going to say, well, where were you? Where were you for those, 3-4 months when I needed you? I could have managed my caseload, but you never assigned me anything.
Yeah, exactly. We've been telling you we had 50 available slots every month. And
so they're going to do this.
Exactly. It's that guy. It's the other one, right? It's okay. I made a mistake on my form. What do I do? I've always told people to if they make a mistake on the entry, they must correct it on the DS260. That's their only chance, right? And I've also always told people that most mistakes on the entry and can be corrected on the DS260 mainly safely if there's one mistake or 2 mistakes. But if they've got multiple mistakes or there's some indicator that suggests they've got some sort of fraud, then that case is at risk, obviously. Anything to add to that, or? No,
I mean, I just think a lot of the communications that I see, are these kind of high stress level. Hey, my middle name's misspelled, and should I unlock? And I think, well, no, because there's also a period where if you are scheduled, where you should be able to communicate and upload when you upload your documents or you provide communication to the consulate, where you can kind of say, hey, just wanted to know, I was reviewing my information and I noticed this mistake. So I agree with you. I had an interesting call from someone this week, and I don't answer calls, but I did. And the person said, well, I did a resume the night before the interview in a hurried fashion. And I brought it with me because I think I heard you say, be prepared. And I got AP. I got refused because I made mistakes on that resume. And so I don't recommend that, right? You don't want to start doing things like that. But if you do notice errors, I mean, and there are big, I think the other thing too is the errors go from, I misspelled my middle name to, I didn't put the correct chargeability on. I mean, those things, in terms of magnitude, are like through the roof. So it's
that's a done deal. That's
it's tough to put a one size fits all.
It's not missing a kid. Those things are unforgivable. Can I step back just a second though, when you just said about the resume case? So just to clarify, because people are going to get confused about this, the be prepared thing is have a set of documents ready if you're asked, right? What you don't need to do is volunteer anything, and certainly not give them any documented evidence that you've made mistakes or you've broken some rule or whatever else. You don't need to volunteer that. You only pull out documents if you need to provide them in order to satisfy some question you're being asked. Other than that, you shut the hell up, right? You don't talk. You answer questions. You don't sit there. It's not a chat, right? You don't want to make your case. I mean, as a lawyer, you must be like horrified when your plaintiff starts like, yabbering away and saying, look, I got this piece of paper that,
It's always, I mean, you've nailed it. I mean, it's always answer the question asked and nothing else. But I will tell clients, and I think I said this last week, I've told my clients actually in the 2 cases, and I would tell clients in always, if you have an interview, it doesn't matter if you're before USCIS, the Department of Justice, or Department of State, you're preparing for your interview like it's tomorrow, right? So everyone out there who wants to spend time worrying about whether they should unlock and the KCC is a mess and all that, I said, listen, you're wasting your time doing that. You should be preparing for your interview like it's tomorrow. Know where you're going to get your medicals. Know what you're going to answer if there's something in your background that raises an eyebrow. And then when you go to your interview, I always tell people, like, I'd bring like a suitcase, man, because if you do that, they never ask for anything.
Right?
I mean, they just don't. So I really do believe that we need to spend more time, individually. If you're an applicant, you now have a new visa bulletin, expect to get an interview and then take the time now to prepare. So you're not doing something the night before that gets you put in an AP, which is a black hole.
Yeah, exactly. Most interviews take 5 minutes. They're quick and easy. But as soon as the CO is chasing down some inconsistency, anomaly, or whatever in your documentation, that's when things will go a little bit longer. And it's the sooner you can show that suitcase of documents and you pull the one relevant document out that says, no, that answers that question, that just stops the conversation. The COs are not interested in spending a lot of time on these cases. So, you want to kill the conversation and avoid AP. AP is worth avoiding. AP can actually cause you to lose your visa, right? It's not always that way. Sometimes it's short, but if they do, when you get AP and it goes over the month end, you lose the allocated visa. It needs to be reallocated to you later, and sometimes that reallocation just won't happen because the end of the year will come, or because visas will run out, and you've screwed your case up because you didn't take a document to the interview. That's basic. That has happened many times. Okay, so. Your other question was, you're in AP, is there a way out before September? You can't do much to influence AP once you're in it, right? I mean, other than providing the documents you were missing.
And I have a lot of clients now, the one thing you can do, and it's high risk but high reward, obviously, is you have to file a lawsuit in federal court in the District of Columbia and ask for a restraining order because it's an unreasonable delay. Why is it unreasonable if it's only a month or 2 months? It's because the consequences are so high. It's unreasonable because they should not leave you in limbo and let the time past 9:30 go, 9:30:22, right? It's I don't want to say like, oh, it's an automatic solution. It's not. But you really, if you don't think that they'll just let your case go away and leave you in that limbo, think again. They will, especially if you're from a country. I know I have many clients now that I'm working with from Iran, and from other Middle East countries, Yemen, where they're not in the diversity visa process, but they've been in AP for years, because, and they're saying, some of the specific country related issues, or even Russia as well. There's a lot of Russia. And I think it's easy for them to just put them in the basement and let them sit there because people will give up or they won't do anything about it. For diversity visas, you don't even have that. You don't have that option. Number one, they can't do that. So if you get to a point where you're in August or even late July and you've been refused or put in 221G or administrative processing, I think you have to really think about hiring an attorney and filing a complaint. And because oftentimes, and at least 80% of our cases, non-DV, if you do that, if you file a complaint in the District of Columbia saying it's unreasonable delay, you just get a decision. Now, it may not be the decision you want. It may be a denial, but it's a decision.
Yeah.
It's a decision.
Yeah, which is better than dying on the vine.
It's unbelievable.
Okay, so I think we covered the questions, and we also covered your point about the scale. I think You did make the point that there are going to be a possibility of higher refusals, and I agree with you. There will be a higher percentage of refusals. So they're going to have to overschedule. They're going to have to, if they were to have any chance at all of hitting something close to the 55K, which they won't, but if they had any chance at all of that, they would have to schedule, a lot more interviews because some people just won't turn up. Some people will get denied. And those cases would normally have been held back by the document procedure. Okay, I just want to raise this limbo thing. Are you clear with what I mean by the limbo situation?
No.
Okay, so it's this weird scenario. So there's an email that people get, and they're often very confused what it means. But the email says something like "You're current for interview processing." It's a very specific point in time. And in past years, when things were working well, where the embassy capacity was more than enough to take all the cases coming through, it was a guarantee that when you got that current for interview processing thing, you would within a few days, a couple of weeks at most, you'd get your 2NL and you would be scheduled, and there's no problem, right? However, if that current for interview processing email is sent when the case is allocated but not yet sent to the embassy, but it's allocated to the embassy. And the important thing is that during that period, you're not able to make any changes with KCC. And they tell you to contact the embassy, right? But they never send the case to the embassy, and KCC won't let you make changes. So you're actually screwed at that point. You are screwed because you're in limbo.
Well,
right?
and an important point about this is something that we always get all the time is people think that, well, if I just transfer, I'll get an interview. Well, if you're in that limbo state, you can't transfer because you can't transfer because you can only transfer once it's sent to the embassy.
Exactly. KCC could do it.
KCC, right.
Yeah, exactly. KCC could have done it before you were current for interview processing. But once you're in that status, they say, no, you have to ask the embassy. But of course, they're never going to send the bloody case to a closed embassy. Yep. So you are really screwed at that point.
It really is. And we're going to see that with people from Addis. I mean, I know that's happening in Sydney and Cairo. Yeah. And that's why when you drill down to those micro shitless embassies, they have really the control, right? Yeah. They've now been, they're the ones blocking. I have a question for you though, because this is something that always, and definitely more than me on this, is people think, well, I'm in one of those. So if I just transfer, I win because I have a low number and I'm at this, and so I can just I just go somewhere else and they'll just let me do that. Why shouldn't I do that? And I get that all the time. And now I'm not so sure that gets approved, but what's your take on let me game it?
It doesn't work in all cases. It will sometimes work, but the transfer thing, there's two ways of doing the transfer. One is to ask KCC prior to you being scheduled or prior to you being in that interview, current for interview processing phase. By the way, that current for interview processing, if your embassy is working, is great. It is good news. I don't want to give the impression that you're always screwed if you get that email. It's fine if your embassy is working. Anyway, so KCC will transfer a case, and it's not actually a transfer. It's actually just reallocating the embassy at that point. And they will also say, by the way, that only they can change the DS-260. So when your DS-260 is filed for the first time, the very first time you submit it, you choose an embassy. They ignore that choice, by the way, but you choose that embassy, but you as the applicant can never change that selection on the form. Only KCC can do that. That doesn't mean that KCC can't change your embassy, and they will do in some cases, but they need a good reason. And the best reason is because you've moved country, right? So that normally gets approved. If you have actually moved, then you ask to unlock your form, you change your address, and then you email KCC and say, I've moved to, whatever country, and please update my embassy. That would work, I would say, most of the time. But if for whatever reason KCC say, no, we're not going to do that unless you give us a good answer, good reason, then they won't transfer you. And then once you've been sent to Embassy A and you want to move to Embassy B, then the process is not involved with KCC and it's between the embassies. And Embassy B has to agree to accept you. And in some cases, they won't. they'll say, no, we're not going to accept you because you're not resident here. You can't prove resident. Show us your residence. Now, resident shouldn't be a requirement, right? But they make it a requirement through their regulations, right? So they can make that complicated. So nobody should assume that that transfers or changing embassies is a simple answer. It's sometimes not a simple answer.
Well, and the other thing is, I've seen people ask, I transferred, now I want to transfer back, and I'm thinking, you're hurting yourself.
You're hurting yourself. You really are, because you've probably told them you changed address. You may have told some sort of fib or half a white lie in that whole process, and now you're making yourself look a bloody idiot, or you're showing that you lied to them, and that's not great either way.
No.
And people are doing that because they saw the early sort of January things. Oh, this embassy is doing some work, and now their own embassy is doing work, and it's kind of frustrating.
Yeah.
April is going to be important. March was very important, and I have to say the government did well in March. April's also going to be important because of the increased VB. We don't quite know what that means. I'm seeing a lot of people getting that current for interview processing email, which probably means KCC are allocating a lot of cases, and that a lot, there won't be capacity to interview all those cases in 1 month, but they're allocating them. So people are then going to be worried, because they won't get an April interview, even though they got that email.
I got to be honest with you. I mean, I think I'm on record now, and I'm sure I'm going to have I'll have 1,000 people tell me how wrong I am, but I really do expect an amazing ramp, because they know that they have to do it. Yeah, absolutely. I even told my clients, who, believe me, they'll be the first ones to tell me how wrong I am. I said, listen, I think the government's going to pick off half of you. I really do. Right. I think, and because we have some really, we have clients all over the spectrum, but and across the world, but a lot of them should have been interviewed, and they just, they weren't,
Right. Clearly, they don't want to go in front of a judge trying to explain why they didn't interview, Mr. J or whatever that's been current.
Again, I know I've been hitting Sydney, but I represent them, so I have to. They're my passion, and as well as the other case. But the ones in Sydney, I have people, with such low numbers. We're talking almost single digits. It's unbelievable, right? It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. There's no defense for the Sydney thing. There's absolutely no defense. Somebody the other day said, why don't they just get a chair and a table and sit in the park outside the office? If they're worried about COVID, sit outside and, do the bloody interviews. It's absolutely right. They could do the whole thing in a couple of weeks.
But I think, and again, tell me if I'm wrong, but that, that has a domino effect to that region.
It does. It does in a way. That OC is a bit weird. Even in a good year, OC, we'd only see about 200, 250 visas go to Australia. So it's not like it's massive numbers. They could correct this thing in a heartbeat. They literally could do all the interviews in a couple of weeks. They only interview people on Tuesday mornings at Sydney. Tuesday mornings. That's it, right? And, you can guarantee when someone gets their interview period, you know it's going to be Tuesday morning. Occasionally, I saw a Tuesday afternoon, but, in busy times. But that's it. Yeah. So it would be very easy for them to just do the whole thing.
It's funny because, not to make myself too simplistic of a lawyer, but I have a 6-year-old daughter. And when I can explain my case to my daughter and have her look at me like, oh, you're right, Dad, I always feel good. There are some cases where, it's like I'm going outside. I don't know. But when I can, I've explained this case to, she's, and she's like, well,
that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound fair. Yeah.
This is this is the madness that I think is an easy fix. This is why I remain hopeful that I'll get a phone call from either the White House or, the Department of Justice saying, hey, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about this, because I think we can fix this without having the judge yell at us. And I'm all ears. I'm all ears for that,
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So, all right, let's try and take a few questions. I don't know whether people know, but on Sunday mornings, coffee time with Jesse, I try and make sure the questions are about the lawsuits. I don't really want to be taking, random questions about all sorts of other things, right?
You can feel free to do it. I feel like I've talked enough, but and again, I think a lot of times people ask me things, and I defer to you because you are the expert on the sausage making that is the KCC process. I mean, we don't know what's in it, do we?
No. Well, people often say it's a mystery. There's a lot less mysteries than people think. Often people are just not listening. I've been saying some things for a couple of years, and people are just not listening for multiple years. And they still argue with me, about stuff, even when the data actually just shows it's 100% right. But some people will always treat this as a mystery. There are some mysteries. There are some mysteries like, what the hell does it take? Somebody just asked a question about how can they send a letter that says it will take 6 weeks for your processing and then take 8 months to do your processing? It's absolutely a fair question. There's no sense in that. The 6 weeks was always bullshit, by the way. That was never correct or accurate. It wasn't some deadline, but the 8 months is not defendable at all. Okay, so let's take some questions, and I want to. Okay, so here's a question where it's about the DS5535. The DS5535 is like an extended security questionnaire, right? And it's sent to some cases. The fact that you got that shows that you're in AP. You're in AP pending the form, right? So you didn't get approved. The CO said, yeah, your case looks fine. But then after the interview, some supervisor said, yeah, but we want to get the DS5535 on that guy. And when they get the DS5535, they're going to go through your history on that, your friends and family and that sort of thing, your travel history a little bit more in more detail than the DS260 had. And they'll be doing some additional background checks, and it can take a few weeks. So be prepared for that. Okay. I'm not Abdikafar. I'm sorry. I'm probably murdering that name, but but anyway, be prepared for that timeline. Okay. We were talking about this reassigning, Jesse. You're from Iraq. A month ago, you got reassigned to Oman. Is it okay to reassign again to another embassy? I think Oman is working. I don't think this guy should be moving.
Yeah, I need to know more. Like where would you go? And if you cannot go to Oman, that's one thing. But if you can, and it's in a favorable state where they're processing, I would probably leave it alone.
Yeah, me too. Don't keep switching around from embassy to an embassy, because at some point you're going to get into some sort of confusion. Oman has taken cases. They've got 25 cases. I would just, wait for interview. I think Jesse's right. I agree with Jesse on this point about the ramp up in interviews. I think we could see a very significant April. And hopefully the message is getting through because of the lawsuits, etc. I think Impact Team filed their lawsuit as well. I think. And so, the government are starting to get hit, and you're absolutely right, Jesse. I'm sure they're talking to their clients saying, what the hell, why are we getting this again? They don't want to get sued every year, right?
I've said this before. I don't want to sue them. I mean, I have plenty, it really, having to sue over the diversity visa thing is almost, I almost feel bad. I mean, it shouldn't be this way. I mean,
be a happy thing.
Yeah.
Can you explain why you are happy with 25K issued visas? We're not happy with it. We're just
no.
We would like to see 55. It's just that you have to be a daydreamer to think that within the 6 months. So Jesse's point on the numbers earlier was there's 2.5K issued at this point, and we're about to go into March, right? So and March has got about 5,000 people being interviewed, right? So out of the 5,000, something like 4,000 will be approved. And so at the end of 6 months, we'll be at about 6.5, maybe 7,000 visas issued, right? There's only 6 months left of actual, working. And so how are you going to get to 55,000? You're not going to get 48,000 visas issued in 6 months. You're just not. And, there's no point in daydreaming. And there has been some of the impact. in previous lawsuits, some of the impact Judge Mehta was saying, well, COVID did happen. It's a real thing. It's got some impacts. Yeah, but we're 2 years on now, right?
Yeah.
So we there needs to be there's an acceptance. There's been some localized impacts, but there needs to have been a change of procedures. And that's never happened.
And let me just clarify. I don't do like happy. I don't do feelings or hope or pray. I do. I'll be happy when my 111 clients in Husu get interviews. That I'll be happy about that. But I don't do happy. What I do is I prepare. So when I look at 25,000 visas, that is what my frenemy at the government thinks will cure them from any judicial order for more visas. That's the number they've hit on. They know that's and until I'm told otherwise, that's what they think. And so that's where this number is going to go. 25 is probably above their minimum. They're probably saying 20 and no judge will tell us otherwise. That doesn't make it right. It doesn't make me happy. It doesn't make me feel anything. It is what it is. And we just have to take that as the base case. And my job, right, if my clients are not included in that 25,000, is to make sure that they are, or that I push the number higher through the arguments I make in my statements. But no, I'm not happy about it. I'm not anything about it.
Yeah. And just to reiterate what you said before, Jesse, your responsibility is you're paying plaintiff clients, right? And if that causes positive movement for other people, that's great. That's good news. But that's not what you're being paid to do. Your priority is your clients, right?
Yeah, and let me just explain this so everyone's like, oh, didn't you negotiate with the government? I did. I went to the government and I said, listen, I need two things. And I said, we can make all the lawsuits go away. You have to take care of every single one of my clients, and you have to commit to good faith issuance towards, somewhere around 40 to 45. 9% of immigrant visas is something I would live with. Because that's what the historical rate is, and I can justify that on the math, and I don't want to ask for anything more than that. I would have lived with that. But absolutely. I mean, if they told me I will do 111 and fight the rest, I'll walk away because I need my clients to win.
Yeah, exactly. Quick question here is Beirut processing cases on a normal pace? No, they've got 9 cases at the moment. They're not working at a normal pace. April might be different. We'll have to wait and see on that. Sandy, I can't answer this question here. You're asking a very, very general question. As you can tell from my accent, I'm also British. Brits are excluded from the lottery, and I was able to enter because I was married to a Spanish woman, and she was able to enter. But the lottery is what I talk about, not general immigration. You may have some other immigration routes open to you, but I don't know.
I don't know of a visa that's available if you have a certain number of pets. I can assure you of that. Like that, I don't think the number of pets improves your odds. I've never heard of it. I got 2 dogs, so you get like the dog visa.
The dog visa, yeah. Oh no, but there should be a YouTube visa. I mean, if joking apart though, yes, thanks for that. But if this particular YouTuber was a celebrity in some way, with many, many, many thousands of subscribers and active content and all this sort of thing, then there may be routes there. But
and it's funny because I think I've been pigeonholed. I'm almost been typecast now as a diversity visa. I am not a diversity visa attorney. I'm actually a federal litigator, but we do a lot of petition work for athletes, actors, people from all over the world. So you can always contact Wasden Banis if you want other non-DV help. We do that. But we don't do dog visas.
No, quite. What's AP? That's administrative processing. It's a period of like sometimes it's because you were missing a document at the interview and they want you to provide that. Sometimes it's additional background checks. Sometimes it'll be a DS 5535 that they ask you to fill in. There's no harm, by the way, in if you're in a country where you're hearing your buddies are receiving a DS 5535, download the form. It's available on the internet. Fill it out prior to the interview and take it to the interview, right? And don't volunteer it. But if you know they're going to ask you for it, then you can say, "Oh, I've already done that," right? So, but don't volunteer it unless the topic comes up.
And you have to know how the government works. So they only have 3 buttons they can push at an interview. It's approve, deny, or refuse. There's no admin processing. So refusals is admin processing, because it just refuse. It could be refused forever, or it could be refused for now, but all of them are admin processing.
I would argue that point a little bit. There is a 4th button, because we can see in the SEAC data, there used to be a status which was AP. There isn't anymore. It's sort of a refusal, but there is a way to tell the difference between the refusal permanent and the refusal on AP. It's in SEAC data. And so there must be a 4th button. Sorry, I don't mean to argue with you, Jesse.
No. That is super helpful. I think, to be honest with you, I wonder if we broke down that data, if it were certain embassies who were doing it, or if it was, because I would think that would be an embassy specific 4th kind of lever or button.
It used to be all of them. The only one that was weird before the pandemic, etc., was Moscow, that they would put cases on AP prior to the interview. And it was because there was this enhanced security checking that they introduced. I can't remember the year, but they introduced it. And when they started doing that, they just put cases on AP straight away, and everyone was freaked out about it. How could there be AP without an interview? But it was just designating the cases that were going to go through this additional background screening.
I mean, I would argue that that's kind of what they're doing to Iranian nationals now.
Iranian nationals. Yeah, male Iranians,
forget it. Well, they have the rule now about the SEPA. I mean, about the military background. I mean, Yeah.
Okay, so... Ching, 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 ching. And it's not Sandy, it's someone else. It's somebody else. So Sandy may have dogs and cats, but it's somebody else with dogs and cats. Anyway. Do they answer the questions here? Yeah, we do. But some people, we're going to be limited on time today, and some people just post nonsense in there, I'm afraid. So sorry, we'll take a few questions though. Right. No real updates on the Gomez case, the 9,095.
I mean, briefing's been completed before Judge Mehta. We're highly likely for him to say, I'm not staying it. And the government has said everything on the technological side will be done April 18th. And so they may start picking away at some of those visas. And they may drop the appeal, but no, I think right now the next thing will be a decision from Judge Mehta,
right,
on the stay.
Yeah. Johannesburg. Do you have any clients? Joburg. Yeah. Okay. So you're not specifically targeting that, but it will be part of the overall argument. It'll be one of the things that you'll do.
Yeah, and it goes to, I've had a couple of people reach out to me like, hey, would you think about doing something, like your Sydney focused lawsuit? And I would, capacity, if I have the ability and there's a group who wants to pursue that. I think what makes Sydney so attractive, and again, I'm hitting a dead horse, but it's so top of mind, is that there's a specific hook that makes it different. Like we're moving. Johannesburg is close though, because that one is pure, like we're just going to turn a blind eye. Addis, we saw a lawsuit from Curtis, right? And we have plenty of Ethiopian clients. That one is also inexcusable as far as I'm concerned, even though with the country specific conditions there, so I'm open to it. I just want to make sure I can distinguish, like, this is an embassy that is way beyond rogue. Like they're doing their own thing.
Yeah, makes sense. This is Ilias is asking a question about the number of selectees. Did you hear my prompt the other day about a FOIA request for? We need to know in the lawsuits how many DS-260s were filed overall. That's how many people want to proceed, right? And we need to know how many have been processed. And we need that month to month. And that would seem like a legitimate metric that we should be able to know, right? Maybe only through the lawsuit. I don't think they're going to give that information without a lawsuit, but that would be important to know, because one of the things that Judge Mehta got wrong, in my opinion, was that he talked about, yeah, but some people win and they don't proceed, and when you win, it doesn't mean you're going to get, it doesn't get you won't get a visa. Well, if we knew the number of people that had sent in the DS-260 and how many people have been processed to DQ status, that would be a useful metric, because it would show whether KCC are actually doing their job or not.
Yeah, I would say too, like this year, unlike other years, you can make the math far more simple because they're so behind that it doesn't even matter, right? If you've only issued or interviewed, let's say if you interviewed 9,000 and you're in March, do we really care to know that there's 78,000 outstanding selectees?
Right. Yeah. No, true.
Let's make it easy.
Welcome, Saha. Sorry, you missed part of the show. That people should know they can not only subscribe to the channel, but they can also turn on notifications that they are told. And you, Saha, as a YouTuber, you should know that. Right? Do you think so, Jesse? Do you think the regions will go current before the end of the fiscal year? I'm going to defer to you, Jesse, because you're more accurate than me these days.
Yeah, well, I will say, if you look at April, and Simon's right, by the way, it's not like I made a prediction because I'm thinking in my litigator mind. Simon's actually being rational and looking at the numbers, and the numbers would say there's no way AF should be 50,000, right? And some of these other countries. So I do believe, though, that all regions will go current except for maybe OC, because I don't see how that can happen. But again, I don't want to think rationally because the numbers aren't rational. But I do believe that everyone will go current. And here's another reason why, and this is actually, I've hit on this before, but I actually, I've thought more and more about it because I've had a number of clients who are waiting in the United States to adjust, meaning that they can apply for a green card in the United States. It's actually a huge benefit if they just make the world current, because anyone in the United States will then have the opportunity to adjust. And I don't think there's an evil, intent behind it where they say, well, keep the visa bulletin down. I think by making it all go current, they could at least throw a bone, so to speak, or a benefit to those who can adjust status. And that takes pressure off embassies and allows people to go to USCIS. So I do think the world will go current in June. Yeah. I'll even put a month on it. I think it's going to happen in June.
Cool. That's awesome.
Maybe if I'm wrong, you'll be right, because again, you are so.
I'm right. I've not predicted. I'm just telling people what the math says.
Exactly.
It's not. I've said for many, many months, I'm not predicting DB 2022. There's too much going on. But yeah, I just look at the math. The math doesn't work. But who knows what's going to happen? I don't know.
And here's where you and I can bridge, and this is helpful for the audience. And so if Simon is thinking like rationally and logically and doing the math, and I'm sitting here with my litigator hat on saying, yeah, I know, but they got to jack up the numbers to make themselves look good. Well, the next thing is, because they know that all the lawyers will argue otherwise, if they don't get the math to reach that, it looks like gamesmanship. And that's why I connect the dots that for them to justify that visa bulletin, there has to be a ramp up in interviews and issuances.
Right.
Because they can't look so crazy.
Yeah, it would actually make them look worse.
Oh, absolutely.
Making more people current and doing less work would actually make them look worse.
I'll be the first one there to say they did this just because we filed a lawsuit, Your Honor.
Yeah.
And so they've probably said, hey, listen, jack up the visa bulletin, jack up the interviews, jack up the issuances, get us to 20 to 25, and so we can beat the street, right?
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. You asked me before, by the way, I wanted to just show you this. The email, this is Charlie Oppenheim. This is when I emailed Charlie, which was in March 2021. And this is where he describes, he talks about how the visa bulletin is calculated. I've known that for years, and I was kind of polite with him in the email, but yeah, my logic, as it were, is not based on nonsense. It's based on years of understanding it, and also the conversation I had with the guy that was the guy that would make this decision.
I'll tell you right now, Charlie is the only one who, I mean, you and him may be the two top in the world who understand the visa bulletin. Charlie Oppenheimer, I've heard him speak numerous times. He is good people, number one, and he knew it better than anyone else. I'm not so sure they have a new Charlie.
No, funnily enough, I don't know whether you realize, but on the latest visa bulletin, they made a rookie mistake. They didn't even update the date of the announcement of the visa bulletin. Right at the bottom of the VB, it says, and it's official notice, right? It says the date this visa bulletin was released. It still says January the 7th, 2022 or whatever. He didn't update it. So yeah, I think there's a new rookie there. So welcome to the new Charlie, but get your act together.
Yeah.
All right, so get a few more questions and we'll call it a day. Let's see. Morgan Official, do you think the regions go current? Yeah, answered that one. Question about Abu Dhabi. They didn't send February 2NL, March 2NL, and we already see April appointments. Do we see March 2NL for Abu Dhabi, or it's gone? So I don't believe there's going to be many more March 2NLs going out. We'll be focusing on 2NLs for April, but people shouldn't give up on April because they've seen a few interviews scheduled in April already, and maybe don't entirely give up on March. It's possible that they could try and squeeze a few more into March, but not that likely. But the the 2NLs will be coming in over the next 2 to 3 weeks. So just be a little patient and see how those go, right? Is getting an interview appointment means you're DQ? Yeah, you can't be interviewed unless you're documentarily qualified. And the term documentarily qualified as a status, it doesn't have to do with providing the documents anymore, right? So you don't have to provide the documents anymore. The procedure's changed, but it's a status.
The second half of that question or statement gives me a little heartburn. What do you think?
I made a mistake in my country of chargeability on entry form and got an appointment next month at Naples. Yeah, this person, Nina, put your 2 countries and so basically, Nina, the situation is this: when you make a mistake in the country of chargeability, if it crosses a region and you've got no justifiable reason for doing that other than you were living in the other region or whatever, then you will be disqualified. It's one of the things. It's one of the mistakes that 100% will get you disqualified. If you make a mistake within the same region, like you say you are from Italy, but you were actually born in France, for example, then that won't get you disqualified normally. That's forgivable. It says so in the guidance. And I normally see those forgiven. The only region within region possibilities that can cause disqualification are where you were assigned, for example, to Ukraine, which is a limited country, or Nepal, for example, a limited country, and you choose a non-limited country within the region. Then you gained a benefit. You gained the system. You gained a benefit, and therefore will be denied because you gained the benefit if the CO understands that. And I've seen some COs not understand that, but normally they do. So, and if you want to put the countries in at the end of the chat, I'll look for it just before I sign off here. Okay. Ethiopia, as you mentioned, cases in limbo, can't do anything. Country is abyss and non-functional, have a newborn. So what advice do you do? My problem with this limbo status, Jesse, is I don't know what to tell people what to do. It's not just Addis, it's other countries too. There isn't a good strategy. KCC do not seem to be doing anything. So it's almost like you need a specific legal representation for that issue to say, look, this is an unreasonable delay happening at KCC. You're sitting on the case, KCC. You're not sending it to the embassy, and you're not letting me change it.
We have a number of clients in that very situation who have very low numbers and are in that limbo state. I mean, I think that if you're a plaintiff in a lawsuit, there's a way out for you. If not, perhaps the lawsuits can trigger a Ds and some of these others to kind of unlock what's going on.
I hope so. I really do hope so. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Oh, can we ask Jesse about the passport rule? Can we file an appeal because we refused? Oh, you refused on a... Okay. You refused on the passport rule in DV 2021. I must admit, I hadn't heard of any refusals on the passport rule in 2021. But the problem with this is that it's gone past the end of the year and there was no reserved visa for you. And so, unfortunately, I don't think there's a way back from that. Do you agree, Jesse? Or
yeah, I don't see a way out. I mean, you can't. Yeah, I think at this point it's just unfortunate.
The visa wasn't reserved prior to 9/30,
and that that rule that was made immediately effective that was never stayed. So I think they correctly. The judge may say, well, they correctly applied it to you. It's just that now it was proven illegally. It's kind of like, hey, I was barred by the entry ban. Now maybe just like they've done that, maybe Congress or the agency steps inside and provides relief for people who were rejected under that passport rule. That would be one way out, but it's not going to be through litigation.
No, exactly. So what you're referring to, funnily enough, is a question that Sahar is asking here. Now, Sahar is a YouTuber. He works with Arabic applicants, speaks in Arabic to them. So Sahar's asking about the BBB, the Meng Amendment. The Meng Amendment 1 and 2 are those things you're talking about. They're sort of trying to fix the damage that's gone before for the Muslim ban from 2017 to 2020 and for the DV affected by COVID in 2020 and 2021. It's trying to reclaim those visas. Do you have any thoughts about the BBB? There has been a little bit more buzz about it just recently, but I don't. I'm only going to believe it when I see it. When it's actually signed.
I do think there is. I mean, I think there's also talk of a number of executive orders, but you need to think about how Biden has treated the immigration problem, as he sees it, is border and dreamers. And all else has been ignored, in my opinion.
Right.
There may be, I don't think there's going to be recapture of lost visas. I really don't. I don't think because here's the thing. He's not even taking care of this year. So what? He's going to start worrying about last year? So those are going to be the first things that get knocked off.
Right.
We're moving forward. We're dreamers, and asylees, MPP, the border. I don't know. I don't think that everything that's in BBB or is on the table is going to be there when a deal gets signed. If it does, I can tell you there is a renewed effort to get some type of legislation, not just immigration reform, but all, because the Democrats are about to get their heads handed to them in November, and they need to do something. Yeah.
Let's take one more question here. This is kind of important. This is actually the route I got my DV visa. So this gentleman, Omer, has got an H-1B visa a week ago. Company's calling me. So 100% my reaction to this guy would be, get your ass to America and do adjustment of status.
Like yesterday.
Now,
with an H-1B, I will say, with an H-1B, that's one of the few non-immigrant visas where you can have immigrant intent. So you could go in, you could arrive tomorrow. We could file your adjustment of status Tuesday. You're good. You got to do, and you have to. I mean, Omer, I would say 100% get here and do it. No brainer.
And that's precisely what I did. In February 2014, I entered on an H-1 visa. And in September of 2014, I adjusted status to via the DV program through my wife. So it's absolutely fine to have both those things going in an H1. L1s, H1s, they're called dual intent visas. They're rare, but H1, absolutely, you can come tomorrow. So do it. Come and start working.
Let me ask you a question. I know you just released an adjustment of status video. When do you think is the last day? I think you said August before. Do you think USCIS, if you filed in August, will turn around that quick?
Yeah, they would. So I've seen a case actually filed in September, early September, got through within about 20 days. It's unbelievable what they'll do compared to other cases. Yeah. They do understand there's not an expedite formal process, and things have changed from a few years ago, no doubt. So that's why I've backed it up and saying August, right? I don't suggest people wait as late as September, and preferably not August. But I'm just saying that it's still technically possible, and as long as you've got a cooperative, field office, it's absolutely fine. So the process, you file your paperwork. It takes about a week to 2 weeks to get assigned to the embassy. When the embassy assign, basically, sometimes, by the way, they're actually approving cases without even interviews. So if your package is properly filled out, completely filled out, they've actually approved cases without a physical interview, which they're able to do for some reason. It's absolutely fine. So to me, someone who's able to fine by July, for example, is in good shape.
Oh yeah,
because there is good time. Now, I wouldn't want people to push it to August if they can avoid it. And if it's a question of that sort of 30, 60, 90, although it's not 90 anymore, but 30 to 60 day range, I would tend to err towards a faster change of mind at 45 days or something, or 40 days, than waiting the 60 days. If the 60 days takes you into August, I would say no, file earlier. Sort of err towards giving yourself more time.
We've circled June for our clients. Like June is where we have a high level of confidence.
100%. That would be, I kind of watch them every year. I watch how many cases I see that time out, and in a typical year, you get like 1 or 2 cases maybe that time out of.
And it would be someone. It would be someone who gets a request for additional evidence post interview because you didn't have your forms correct or you're missing something. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, thanks for asking that question. I think AOS it's a little known way, but I think it's smart. And you did also make a point to someone the other day about if you're entering with a quiet plan to change your mind, right? That you should have a lawyer. I absolutely agree with that. Like, if the video I did the other day didn't stress that point probably enough. But I believe most people, if they're already in the States or on H1 or whatever, they can probably file themselves. They probably don't need a lawyer unless there's something wacky going on. But if you are coming here with a plan to change your mind, then you absolutely need to be coached by a lawyer through that process, in my opinion.
It's really not coaching. I mean, it's really not dishonest. We have a lot of clients who do this. And I made this kind of tongue-in-cheek analogy the other day. It's like, I woke up yesterday and I really wanted to eat a healthy breakfast. And then I went to the kitchen and I made pancakes, right? And so it didn't work out like I planned it. It's kind of like the same thing. I came here for a vacation, and then I looked at maybe a new visa bulletin, and I said, you know what?
Why am I going to fly home?
I'll just do it here. And I had every intent of going back, but my intent changes. Your intent can change. You just can't have the same intent and come in on a tourist visa, show up at the border and say, I'm coming in on a B1. I'm going to apply for adjustment of status next week. If you say that, not only are you done, but if they put like misrepresentation down as the reason expedite remove you, it's a lifetime bar. So you absolutely need to make sure you have an attorney who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, you're playing with fire. Absolutely. And you need to be very careful. And the other thing is, with AOS, there is, when you file the AOS, you're entitled to file an EAD as well. But the EAD processing timelines are slower than adjustment of status, right? So there's really no point in doing the EAD.
I mean, it's free, you know, so it doesn't cost you anything. But for our clients, I mean, don't hold your breath. You're going to get your green card.
Doesn't make sense. The EAD is a thing for people that don't know that would give you the right to work while you're waiting for adjustment of status to go through. But the EAD itself takes time to process and approve, and you're more likely to get your case approved before your EAD is approved. And so it doesn't make sense, in my opinion, to normally file it.
Right now, they're taking, 8 to 12 months to do EAD. Yeah, but that's a normal adjustment.
Exactly. But the EADs on DV don't go faster. The DV goes faster, but not the EAD. It doesn't make sense. So that does mean that if you're on a type of visa that doesn't come with permission to work, you cannot work. You must not break any rules. You can't. You've got to have the financial wherewithal and friends or family or whatever that support you in order to abide by the terms of your visa.
And this is a huge point too, because I don't know, just so everyone knows, you also have to stay in the country. Once you file, you cannot leave the United States, because if you do, you'll abandon your application.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of landlocked unless you get what they call advanced parole, but you're not going to get that either. So once you come here and you say, well, I'm going to do adjustment of status, you're in.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And if that means, if God forbid your relative dies back at home and you want to go to the funeral, you can't. You have to. I mean, you could, but you've abandoned your petition, and your green card is gone.
And exactly. Your DV chance is out.
Yeah. So you've got to understand the life choices you're making and be prepared to stand by them. Right. Actually, last quick question here, because it's about the stay on. I love the way that the judges have reacted to this sort of bullshit by the government on the get the stay through quickly. But what's the normal timeline for a stay? It's gonna play out by about what, March, April time or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would actually think Judge Mehta is, as harsh as he was to the government, he sees no reason to hold the ball here, because he knows where this is going. He's going to deny it. It's going to go up to the. I don't think he'll have a hearing. I know Judge Chutkan scheduled a hearing in the other case, but I don't think Judge Mehta is going to have a hearing. I would expect to argue it though, if it was, but it'll probably just go up to the circuit court. That's really where I don't have visibility into the chances. I have really good visibility with Judge Mehta. He's not going to grant them a stay. But up at the circuit court, they may take a harder look, and at the Supreme Court, they'll take a hard look.
Right. If they take the case on. So the circuit court would take the case for sure, right?
Well, they already have it. They already have a case because it's already appealed. But, so here's the thing, though. The Supreme Court doesn't necessarily have to take the full case to issue a stay. Okay. It would be an appeal of the stay.
Right.
And there they will weigh in. They will weigh in.
Interesting.
But, I mean, you got to think about it, too. Like, this is an important point, and just so you know kind of the makeup of the Supreme Court right now. Everyone thinks, well, it's xenophobic, it's filled with Republicans. It's actually not so clear like that. What you have right now is a conservative branch, for sure, that holds the majority. But you have a large contingent within that majority who is anti-administrative state. And so anytime you have, if I were going to argue any case before them, you can make the case. This is really about functional government and what it's not doing. And there it actually helps us. And this is actually, our judge in Kentucky, everyone's like, whoa. Isn't she super conservative? She's conservative. But what we're talking about is a government that should be working as it should. And it's not. And it's not. And that's why. So it's not about, don't be afraid of the Supreme Court. Don't be afraid of conservative judges.
Right.
The judge in the passport rule was about as conservative as they come.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Okay. I did say that I was going to look for Nina's follow-up. It's not good news. She was born in Saudi Arabia, which is Asia region. She's got an Africa region case because she chose Sudan. That's almost certainly a denial. The only chance that you have is there's two things. One, you could be married to someone from the Africa region, preferably Sudan, and therefore you could have charged through your spouse. That marriage has to have been in place. It has to have been in place at the time you applied for the lottery, right? You can't just marry and fix it now. The other thing is there is a sort of an ability to charge through parents, but it's complex, and it generally relies on one of the countries not being eligible, like your birth country not being eligible. But you say, well, I was only in that country because my parents were sent there by their employer for 6 months or for a year or something, and that's when I was born there. And if you can prove that story, then there's an exception based on that. If neither of those exceptions, the spouse or the parents thing, apply, then you are 100% certain, Nina, to be refused at the interview. So if you want to believe me, you can believe me. If you don't want to believe me, you can spend your money on the interview, but you'll lose the money. So there you go. All right. So glad we got to that one too. All right, I think we've probably done it. I'm going to go out and do some Home Depot type shopping.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, yeah. My wife has got me spending all sorts of money on, doing a perfectly nice house. I don't know why we have to do it, but anyway, it's just one of those things we like to spend money, apparently, right?
Well, I guess that's true. Well, I'll tell you, what you also do is you are super generous with your time, and I think I always want to thank you because I see what you do out of the goodness of your heart, and on behalf of our clients and our law firm, we are super grateful for your service, and I just want to thank and any little bit that we can do to come on here and put a litigator cap on or a lawyer's cap to help you do what you do well. That's what I'm here for. So I just want to thank you because I do know, and I've known you now for close to 3 years, and I've seen you operate with such just good nature and really just a big heart that you really deserve everything that's coming to you. And hopefully Home Depot gives you a good discount. You should tell him you're the DV. You should tell him. You should say, you know who I am. I'm the DV man. So
yeah, right.
That
and 50 cents gets you a couple
2x4s and maybe a sink.
Yeah.
But no, man, it's all good. Yeah.
All right.
We'll talk soon. I'm sure if there's a need for coffee next Sunday, I'll be around. But maybe we'll just have awesome news to share, and no one will want to hear us anymore.
There you go. Hope so. All right, Jesse. Keep well.
Right.
Speak to you this week. All right. Bye-bye.